What up, great people? You know who it is and what it is. I am Mr. Darkeye from the Mista Darkeye Podcast. Motivation to trust God and live your dreams. Today is January 26, 2022. It's been a great, awesome year. At least I hope it's been awesome for y'all as well. But today I am excited to have a wonderful, great couple and friends of mine. And I gotta say, Jonathan and I, we go back a few years.
That we do.
From the time I met you, brother, you have been someone that was just letting me know how open you are to lend a helping hand in any way you possibly can, and that's rare.
Oh,
so,
man. Thank
so
you,
definitely want to say kudos to you and appreciation to you for that. But on the show today, I have Jonathan and Crystal Nazeer in the building. What's up, y'all?
Hey, thanks for having us.
You got fanfare. I liked it.
Yes, definitely. Got to give you a round of applause. Give you flowers while you can still smell them.
Oh, man, beautiful.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. So, otherwise, how are y'all day going?
Oh, man, incredible. It's been busy, as always, but good day.
Yeah.
Good day thus far, and still got plenty more work to do. So, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and giving us a platform, and we want to thank you for that. But man, we're just here and excited to talk about, Victory Gardens and the work that we're doing in the community.
Absolutely. Victory Gardens International, right?
Yep.
And community redevelopment based on urban farming, food production, food access, job creation in low wealth communities.
That's it.
That's right.
That's it, right?
That's us.
That's it.
Mission.
So I did a little research. So from y'all give me the overall vision of Victory Gardens International.
Wow.
That's loaded, right?
Yeah.
It's a little loaded. I can jump in. I want to make sure. I'm a bit of a talker.
Go right ahead.
Darkeye, and sometimes my wife has to nudge me a little bit. I still got a lot of black preacher in me, so I'll promise not to say it in closing and still go for another 45 minutes. But in truth, we never. I don't think we ever set out to start a nonprofit. It was really about us just being servant leaders in our community, and trying to do right by people. And so we moved to Rock Hill almost 5 years ago now, from the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay.
Prior to us moving here, I think we had come to Rock Hill maybe once or twice. And then our son was a student at Winthrop, so we really never even went past Cherry Road. And a good friend of mine that worked with us at Radio 1, Wanda Reed, shout out to Wanda, who just celebrated her 60th birthday. So I got a shout out
to Wanda. Happy birthday, Wanda.
And Wanda said, listen, you really should consider Rock Hill. And so she brought me down and took took me on a tour. And I kind of fell in love with the city. I'm originally from Greensboro, North Carolina, and it reminded me a lot of Greensboro, its quaintness and that sort of thing. And so we decided that that's where we were moved to. And so we have two younger children that are homeschooled, and everybody knows those kind of socially awkward kind of homeschool children. And so we didn't want that for them. And so we got heavily involved at Emmett Scott Rec Center.
Okay.
So we got involved there. We, but we started off boxing, and then I ended up coaching basketball, and then Crystal ended up doing some stuff, and then our daughter ended up getting involved in dance. And so Emmett Scott really kind of became that central kind of nucleus for us. And so our 14-year-old, then 13-year-old said, hey, Dad, why don't we move closer to Emmett Scott? And we were
for
like,
selfish reasons.
I'm not sure about it. And so Crystal and I talked about it, and we talked about the fact that if we really wanted to be servant leaders, we needed to be in the community
in which we would serve.
Right. And so we found a little spot right there in South Jones, and we moved in, and it was late October. I was on my way to a city council meeting, and a young man was shot and killed right outside of our door.
Wow.
And, it really kind of changed everything. And unfortunately, our son witnessed the whole thing. And so the very thing that we were trying to keep him away from, really, quite honestly, just showed up at our doorstep.
Right.
And so I think that that's really what kind of sparked a lot of this. And so, the sad part about it is I ended up going to this city council meeting and people were arguing over masks. And I'm thinking to myself, like, they're young Black men specifically,
right,
being shot and killed in this community. And like, we got to come up with a better way. Like what we're putting our energy towards, arguing and fussing, really in truth, man, is not as important as saving the lives of, young men in our community. And so we took it upon ourselves. We kind of organized a kind of neighborhood block party because this was right in the middle of COVID, and invited everybody out. Thank you to the city of Rock Hill, Neighborhood Empowerment. Doreen Bowler helped us organize things, and the city paid for it. And we fried fish and gave out food. And it was supposed to go for like 4 hours, and we ended up being out there until like well past dark. And it really was just a good event that bring people out in the community. And so, in conversation and doing so, we ended up meeting the pastor at Redeeming Life Christian Ministries, Bishop Gelliard, and we started having some conversation around gardening. And he offered us, I said, I kind of got this crazy idea. I'm kind of into this gardening thing. My wife and I, man, we'd love to build a community garden. And he says, well, why don't you come up to the church and see if you can find a little spot? And the church sits on the former site of St. Anne's School, and just like 4 acres of just like a great facility. And so, again, not even a nonprofit. Somebody on a whim sent us a little email about an organization that was offering these community garden grants. And so we asked Bishop if we could fill out the grant and utilize their nonprofit, and he allowed us to do so. And so it started off with that little 10-bed community garden for members to come out and get vested and grow their own food. And, it was really kind of dynamic for the seniors in our community who had been cooped up in the house because of COVID. And that isolation, could really do something to your mental. And so many of them got a chance to come out and put their hand in the soil, and we talked and we learned about each other, and we got some great food because a lot of them were taking the stuff and cooking meals for us, which we were all for. But it was really just about community and creating community. And that's really what kind of, long story short, that's really what kind of sparked it all for us. There were some other things that kind of transpired, leading us up to, our project over at Emmett Scott. But ultimately, it was really about, conversation. Food is one of those, food is everything, you're as Black folk, we eat when we happy, we eat when we sad,
we find an occasion.
We find an occasion to eat,
when you're bored.
Right. So food is such a transformative sort of thing. But what we started realizing is that many of our neighbors, didn't have access to good food. And so, with more research and just other things, we realized that, like, we don't use the term food desert. I think it's kind of like an overused statement. We use the term food apartheid because a desert is something that's God-made, is natural. What's happening in our community, especially on the South Side, it's been very systematic through policy and other things. And so it really is one of those situations where it was a forced apartheid. And so many of our neighbors, including ourselves at times, there's no grocery store close to us. So we're left to shop for good food inside of Family Dollar and the Dollar General. And you and I both know that, that's all processed food.
Absolutely.
And so when we talk about some of the diseases and illnesses that, affect our community, primarily diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, those things, food has, a big part of that. And so our whole goal was, how can we use what quite honestly is a bit of a hobby for us, but turn it into something much more sustainable in a way to kind of help redevelop communities. Quite honestly, poverty is one of those things, like, you don't find crime where there's low poverty, or low poverty, low crime, high poverty, high crime. And so this idea that, people need to work and be able to put food on the table. People need to be able to have access to good food to put on the table.
Right.
So it was just like for us, like all of these things all kind of fit together. So why not create something? And so that's ultimately, in a nutshell, that's kind of how this whole thing got started. I thank God for my wife, who really supported me and encouraged me to step out on faith with this whole nonprofit thing, because again, it was never our intentions. Like you and I met, I have a career in radio. And so, that was my thing. And my wife works in accounting. And so, we were kind of living these kind of quote unquote corporate lives, but I think we were both kind of burnt out. We always knew that we wanted to do something together, but we always wanted to do something that helped the community. And so this kind of fell in place, and she's just like, oh, why don't we just start a nonprofit? I'm like, all right, let's start a nonprofit. Beautiful. And that's kind of how it kind of birthed.
I'm glad you told the full story. That's a beautiful story.
I know, and that's a long story.
It's a beautiful story. And, of course, there's, unfortunate things that happen there, but, God has a purpose.
Absolutely.
Always, in everything that happens. And I think that the education part of what you're doing is important too, because I've been around like individuals in my family who had, like, my father, he always had a garden with some cucumbers and some tomatoes and stuff like that, and okra, but I never really looked at it like it was a big deal.
Man. It's a huge deal.
Yeah,
it's a huge deal.
Because like you're saying, like with your health, that plays a part in it, and being able to get fresh, fruits and vegetables or whatever from learning how to be educated on these things. So what are some of the programs that you all have that kind of falls in line with some of that? Like, do you have like specific programs where people can get educated on farming?
Yes. Do you wanna jump in?
Yeah.
And hit that a little bit, or you want me to continue to keep going?
Well, we have, with the Emmett Scott program, we're going to have the senior, what do you call it?
So with Emmett Scott, and let me tell you that story real quick, because I think it's important. So I ended up getting on the advisory board at Emmett Scott, and one of the first meetings I go into, they're having some discussion about tearing down the old tennis courts.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, man, don't tear down the tennis courts. Like, we could do something with the tennis courts. But apparently, for years they have been trying to figure it out, and they can never come to some sort of consensus on what they wanted to do. So it was slated to actually be torn down. It was a work order was already turned in. It was just a matter of them showing up and start tearing it down. And so I came up with this bright idea. I was like, let's turn it into a community garden. And initially the board was like, nah, I don't think that's going to work. Who's going to do the work? Who has that expertise? That sort of thing. So I kind of came home and told Crystal about it. And Crystal was like, we need to try to get it ourselves, let's proposition the city and see what we could come up with. And so we kind of went through that process and ended up getting the advisory board on board. So Emmett Scott in itself, well, we call it a community and innovation garden.
Okay.
So think about two tennis courts. So on one tennis court, that's the community garden side. And on that side, we'll have about 30 raised beds, specifically for members of the community. You can come out and lease one and take part in some of our educational classes. We'll help provide plants and, really kind of teach you how to garden. You can grow whatever you want to grow. You can grow whatever you want to grow legally.
Yeah.
Somebody like, wait a minute, what?
Right. Yeah.
Can I really?
Yeah. So, it's kind of on a first come, first serve basis. Everything is based upon, finances. So, if, it's on a sliding scale. So, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to afford it. And then 10 of those raised beds will be set aside for the first 4-H club that'll be hosted at Emmett Scott. It's really the first 4-H club in the city limits, because most of the 4-H programs are all in the county. But, we're going to take a little bit more of an urban approach to it. And so a lot of what we're growing there, young people kind of get an idea to understand where food comes from. That's like our big thing, is trying to explain that to them, and there's so many learning lessons in that. You can tell a child you reap what you sow. But until they understand what that really means, when you got to put a seed in the ground and you got to water it and you got to wait for it and that sort of thing. And it, the idea that when anything takes root, it shoots down before it shoots up. I mean, like, there's so many learning lessons in that process, right?
That stuff will preach right there.
Yeah, absolutely it will. And so, but we also want them to take the harvest and be able to take that to some local food pantries who always have a shortage on fresh food. Yeah. But now we're trying to get them involved in that process. So that's the community garden side. The innovation garden side, like, we're like so pumped up and excited about that, because that'll house our greenhouse, which will feature 50 hydroponic growing towers, and so and a shipping container that will be able to grow roughly about 800 pounds of mushrooms per month. And all of those items grown inside of there actually go we're actually working with some local restaurants. Shout out to Derek Lindsay and Showmars, who we're going to be growing lettuce and a couple of different varieties of lettuce and fresh vibes. We're going to be growing spinach for them and some other local restaurants that we're trying to work with right now to try to grow specifically for them. And that'll also kind of house our workforce development program. So we're taking young people from the community, and they're actually going to be working in the garden, man. And but in addition to working in the garden, there's a financial literacy program, and we're going to take them on college tours, and we're going to be able to introduce them to various careers centered around agriculture, not necessarily being a farmer, although being a farmer is a great thing, but we want to talk to them about agriculture, engineering, and natural sciences, and being a chef, and that sort of thing. So we're going to introduce them to different things, and also have them learn to become advocates for food insecurity in our community. And so we'll be taking applications on students who may be interested in that. And on top of that, they get paid. So it's a great summer job program for them too.
That's great.
Yeah. So we're super excited about how we're going to be able to introduce that in such a kind of cool way. And then we'll still be out with our mobile produce stand, taking that around to the community. So a lot of what we grow inside of the greenhouse we'll be able to sell, and we'll continue to partner with other local farmers in the area too, of being able to bring affordable produce back to members in the community that they can walk to.
And all the money that we raise goes back into the program.
Yeah. So our whole idea was really trying to create a sustainable model so that we are a 501c3. We do this basically based upon charitable donations and grants. But what we did want to do, and we see it happen a lot of times, that, organizations offer great programs, but then, after a couple of years, if they don't get that grant again, that program goes away. So what we thought about is, like, treat this just like any other business. And so all the proceeds that we make off of the sale of what we sell on the farm goes back into the program. And that way we can kind of continue to keep pushing the program and, God willing, expand, because this is only like the tip of the iceberg, man. We've got so many other things that we want to do. And so we've got some great partnerships right now. So we just recently partnered with Winthrop University Human Nutrition Department. And we're utilizing some of those students to come over and talk about nutrition and talk about good food, right? Because, I think the idea of what good food is, it's not always just eating salad and bland foods and that sort of thing. We're talking about what to eat. We people of color, man. We like a little soul in our food. And so, but I think that there's a way of doing it, and doing it in a healthy way. Right. And that's what we got to educate ourselves on. Most of us eat the way that our parents ate. Right. And it's kind of a passed down sort of thing. But if our parents were eating wrong, then typically what ends up happening is, we eat wrong. And so just prior to us coming here, we were in a meeting with after school program where we do an 8-week healthy eating program. Crystal can share more about that. But that's something else that we're trying to do, and we want to expand that to some other programs and after school programs in schools coming up in the future too.
Yeah. And what we do with the after school program, we just introduce different kinds of foods. Something that they may not be familiar with. So the idea is, if you try it, you don't like it, that's okay. At least you tried it, and you can articulate and say, I don't like green peppers. Instead of saying, ew, I'm not eating a green pepper.
Right.
You don't know why. You can clearly say, I don't like the taste of it.
Right.
So we had the children try hummus. And we talked about the chickpea and where it comes from and everything. And, most children may not be interested in hummus because they've never had it. It may not be something they're familiar with. But we tried regular hummus, and then we had what was it? Pumpkin hummus,
pumpkin spice,
and it was cookie
sneakerdoodle
hummus, right?
Yeah.
So we had 3 different kinds of hummus, and they were actually very impressed, and a lot of them enjoyed it, and were like, "I've eaten hummus."
Right.
I mean, so you can. The thing that we try to teach them or introduce them to, everything may not be as bad as you think it is. It's just in how it's prepared. Like, I'm not a fan of yellow squash because I have a texture issue with it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I won't eat it. And it doesn't mean that I just don't prefer it. So you can have a preference, and that's what we try to.
Or even trying different ways to prepare it too, so that that's a lot of times what you think you don't like, you may like, you just don't like the way that was prepared. Crystal tells a story about Brussels sprouts, right? Like growing up, she never really liked them because
my mother didn't like them.
Her mother didn't like them, and I think you guys talked about eating them like they were like boiled or something like that.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's that thing of you're passing down your food of what you eat or what we're accustomed to and how it's prepared. So my mother didn't like them. She didn't prepare them.
Right.
So I assumed that I didn't like them, not knowing it was just because it was never prepared.
So I hooked up, a little olive oil, a little garlic, that sort of thing. She was like, wait a minute. This kind of tastes like cabbage. I can go with that. So again, it's just really trying to introduce children to different ways of eating.
That story, we're back in Maryland and we're fixing it. And she's just like, what's that? I said, this is Brussels sprouts. She was like, I like that.
Yeah.
So now she's changed her opinion about Brussels sprouts. But again, it's about the way it's prepared. So even the children can say, hey, mommy or daddy, I like this vegetable. Can we prepare it this way?
Right.
And the parent may not have ever thought to prepare it that way.
Yeah. So that's very true, because the first time I had squash, I didn't like it. Right.
Yeah.
But somebody made a casserole.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it changed the whole thing.
The cheese up in there.
I was like, okay, I can eat squash casserole,
Right.
but just squash.
So that's really, I think we get really, you can look at me and tell I get excited about food, but no, in truth, we really get excited about good food and trying to educate people on what good food is, give an opportunity for people to try things. Like, we learned a lot too. Some of the ladies that came by the mobile produce stand talked to us about okra and how they prepare their okra. And these are things that I didn't know. And so, it's not always about us teaching. It's also about us teaching and learning too, right? And having those conversations around food. And, Crystal is a master canner. So, we're talking about offering canning classes, which, is a bit of a dying art form, and it really is an art form. But, growing up in North Carolina, my grandmother in the middle of winter would crack open, a mason jar full of corn, and it tasted like it was just pulled out of the garden in late August, you know what I mean? Because of that survival form of canning, right? So, we talk about food from the standpoint of good food for our health, but just honestly, man, for survival, when we look at the supply chain issues that we're having now, and you go into the grocery stores, and a lot of things that you used to be able to go in there and just grab, they're no longer available because of this thing. And so, we're trying to teach people about gardening in their own backyard so that they can help supplement their own income, help supplement their own cabinets and pantries. And so it's that piece of it, but we also want to create entrepreneurs. And so we want people to be able to learn how to grow food, and then they can go to the farmer's market and they can sell what they've grown. And then we talk about the whole food processing opportunities there. you know, I grew up in a household. My parents were bakers and caterers by trade, and so, you know, I can literally remember going with my mother to the farmers market and her selling, you know, her pound cake and her coconut cake and that sort of thing. These are all, but these are all economic opportunities for people in the community that they can take advantage of, and maybe we just give them a little bit of training on how they never looked at that as a business, but now we can talk to them about how do you turn it into a business. And we most definitely need a farmers market on the South Side, and you know, we'll continue to champion for that and advocate for that, because you know, people need, there may not be a grocery store that comes to the South Side immediately. But a farmers market is something that we can do right now, and it gives an opportunity for local farmers in the area to come out and sell what they've grown and support these farmers, these young farmers or old farmers, whatever the case may be, but still supporting them economically. You know, most of us have no idea where our food came from. Like, we're still on that thing of, I just go to the grocery store and pick it up, but it may not always be there. There was a time where everybody kind of knew where their milk came from, where their vegetables came from, and their fruit came from, even where their meat came from. It's no longer there.
And that when we're getting our fruits and vegetables that are being distributed across the country or across the world, you know, it tends to affect our body. So if we go to those places, we will have natural allergy protection in those places. So if you think about where you are, you have allergies. That's because you're not eating the food locally grown that's being pollinated by the bees that are local here. So when they say go get, if you have allergies, you hear some people say, oh, go get local honey, because it's got the pollination in it, so that it's in your body and you're building up your immune system. So if you think about, if you're eating strawberries from Ecuador, you go to Ecuador and you're not going to be sneezing.
No allergies in Ecuador, because we eat all our food from some of these other foreign countries rather than eating food from a local perspective.
So, I think that all of this, the main thing that I'm hearing, like, I love the education of it, because it's, you know, I've never really paid attention to it all, like, the, you know, because we go to the grocery store, we buy the fruit and vegetables out of the grocery store, but what is your take on that? Because that stuff really, like, because they have to utilize some type of chemicals and stuff to keep it fresh, and so that may not necessarily, you think you're buying something that's healthy for you out of the grocery store, but then again, there's something else there.
I think it's, if that's what you have access to, that's what you have access to. The thing is to make the best choice. So when you're going in the grocery store, if you're shopping on the perimeter of the grocery store, you're making the best choices for you. Is when you get into the middle of the grocery store is when it really starts to affect your body. But if you're still, even if it's, get the best that you can get. That's the point, is just to get the best that you can get. And you shouldn't have to go miles away to get the best that you can get. And that's the point of this entire thing, is if I don't have a vehicle, I should be able to walk to the grocery store. I shouldn't have to catch a bus to go across town to go to the closest grocery store. That's what food insecurity or food deserts, food apartheid, whatever you want to call it. If I have to go too far to go to the grocery store, or I have to wait on transportation to go to the grocery store, it's just too far to just get fresh produce. The thing is fresh produce.
I think our thing is like, we're not food snobs, right? And so this idea of like, oh, well, I can only shop at, you know, these gourmet kind of high end, no preservatives, none of that stuff. I mean, and that's cool. Don't get me wrong. That's but for folks who are just trying to put two dimes together, you know, to eat, we want to make it affordable too, right? So what we're concerned about is just the quality. I think when you start tasting locally farm fresh food as opposed to what you've been getting out of the grocery store, man, you feel like you're bamboozled. You know what I mean? It's just like, because a lot of that stuff is picked off of the vine
before
it's ripened. It's ripened on a truck as it's traveling from God knows where to get to you. A lot of times they're putting wax on it and paint. I mean, and people are eating tomatoes like, straight off of the vine, and they're like, I've never seen anybody do that. We had like a couple different varieties of cherry tomatoes. We had red and yellow and orange, and each one of these colors have a different flavor. It can be a little spicy, a little sweet, a little tart, that sort of thing. But they're eating and they're like, oh my God, like I've never eaten food fresh off of the vine. Why does this tomato taste so much different than the tomato that I've been eating out of the grocery store? It's just like, well, this is real food.
Right. Yeah.
The sun is
the sun and the pollination and all of those things. So it just tastes different. And so I think what has happened over the years is people just been eating, basically just bland food, man. And when you come out to the garden, you start picking that stuff off, man, and you realize like, oh, this is real food. I can enjoy this. I can eat this. Alex Greenwald with Pathways came out. She said she didn't like tomatoes, right? But she saw us picking it off. So we were picking tomatoes off, picking off a little piece of basil. We were wrapping it and eating. She was like, you know what? I like to try that. I don't like tomatoes, but I like to try it. So she tried it. And she's like blown away, like, oh my God. So we meet with her several months later, and she was like, yeah, I've been eating tomatoes and wrapping it up in basil leaves all the time now. So, sometimes it's just a matter of just kind of introducing people to good food. So that's, we're okay with grocery stores. We just want our grocery stores to provide, the best quality food at the most affordable rate that they can. And we understand that they got to make profits too. But, we just want our people to be able to eat and eat well so that we can cut down on some of the disease that affects our community.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very important.
There's going to be some things that you can't grow, and you got to go to the grocery store. But the things that you can grow, like a tomato or cucumbers or zucchini, grow those. Yeah. And then the things that you're not sure about, purchase those. But just purchase the best quality you can afford. And that's the main takeaway.
Yeah. So what we want people to do is come out, maybe get their kind of gardening 101 sort of class at Emmett Scott or at one of our other community gardens. And then what we want you to do is take that and go home and apply it at your own house, because everybody has a little backyard, a little something they go. Like we can even teach you how, even if you don't have a garden, even if you don't have land, that you can still grow. You can grow inside of hay bales and that sort of thing. Like there's no excuse. You can all grow inside of containers. Like, so we just want to give people that kind of jump start, get them started. And then from there, you start growing your own food. Because, what we want is people to be like, hey, listen, there's so many gardens in Rock Hill. We don't need an organization like yours.
Right.
That'd be cool, too.
Yeah. Because the main key is the growth, right? And I think like the growth, the education is going to absolutely cause that to happen. Because like I said, I'm getting educated just listening to y'all kind of give me the gist of all of this. Because I think this is going to empower people to eat healthier and be mindful of this, and then as they learn, and as you teach what's taught. So once they learn from you all, now they're going to be able to teach other people on the importance of it and how they can do it as well. And like you said, it can grow to the point where now you got it's the new thing.
Right. Right.
I think that's great.
Listen, we would love to make gardening like trendy.
Yeah. It can happen.
It's happening. Yeah. We and maybe it's just because of the world that we live in, man, but we're seeing some really cool organizations across the country, locally. Maya and Ariandro with Rooted Black Farms, and up in DC, Beats and Gardening. They really kind of putting it down. Like you would appreciate them, and they're just great organizations. Grow Flow out of DC. Great organizations or great individuals that are teaching about gardening and teaching about sustainable eating, we want to make like there's fast food, slow food is cool too, So we want to show we want to show that aspect of it all too, you know. So hey, Darkeye, let us ask you a question too, because that
go ahead.
This is typically where we start all of our conversations, and I think we were just so eager to kind of get started. So we ask this question pretty much to everybody that we come in contact with. What's your favorite vegetable and why?
My favorite vegetable. You know, that's the first time I've ever got asked that question.
Most people don't get asked that.
Oh man, when I was a kid, it was green beans, but as an adult, it's actually broccoli.
Why?
Broccoli because I don't know, because I can eat it so many different ways.
Yeah.
That's why, and then no matter which way I've eaten it, I love it.
Okay.
I think that's really what it is.
Yeah, Crystal, share yours.
Mine is zucchini.
Okay.
Because you can, like you said, you can have it so many ways, but you can also bake with it. You can make jams with it. You can saute it. You can, you can make spaghetti. You can. There's so many different things.
Mine is tomatoes.
Okay.
One, there's just a huge variety of tomatoes. Like
Okay.
you get Romas and beef stocks and heirlooms, and they come in different colors. They taste different.
Yeah.
You can make sauces with them. You can make ketchup with them. You can eat them straight. You can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so many different things that you could do with a tomato.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we've been talking, right? Like I'm pretty committed that I'm getting ready to get this tomato tattoo right now. So if
you get the tomato tattoo?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Like it's taking me years to figure out what
Crystal said
I'm committed.
no, man.
I'm committed, Darkeye, and it's gonna happen. Whether
Well, say where you want to put it, and then you can
we'll
understand
figure
why
that
I
out
say
later.
it's not,
We won't
he's
talk
like
about that.
on my hand.
You want the tomato on your
I
hand?
want people to know that when I'm out like that, I'm serious about what I do, and two, I think it's a great conversation starter because somebody's gonna ask,
it definitely
why
would
do
be.
you have a tomato tattooed on your hand?
I promise you, if you had that on your hand right there, that's how we would have started.
There we
the
go.
interview.
See, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up with that tomato on your hand, man?
Yeah, but you know, I do want to say this, like we are a nonprofit, right? And so we would be remiss if we didn't come over here to talk about, like, as much as this is our vision,
Right.
We couldn't do this work without the help of individuals in the community. So shout out to everybody who's helped us out this far.
Right.
Shout out to Keisha Thompson and Hope and the Food Share Project and what she's doing. She's doing great work. And there are so many other organizations and individuals who have supported us in our effort to get this started. But we always need help, right? Because we're fairly new nonprofit. So if anybody's interested in making a tax-deductible donation, they can always go to our website at growwithvictory.org. That's growwithvictory.org. But more than anything, we always need volunteers, right? So
awesome.
We need individuals that can come by and willing to roll up their sleeves and kind of help us. We got a lot of infrastructure to build over at Emmett Scott. We've got a greenhouse over there. We've got these raised beds that we've got to build. We've got a lot of soil we got to transport and that sort of thing. So we always need a little bit of sweat equity, but we also need people. We're calling on local chefs, you know, to help us out there too, and helping us create some fantastic dishes that we can get people accustomed to eating, and also calling on those chefs and restaurant owners too, because we're gonna have a whole lot of lettuce
and mushrooms
and mushrooms. And so if they're interested in purchasing from us for wholesale, we'd certainly love the opportunity to grow for them. And it I think